Welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, grief and transformational life coach and fellow griever, Tara Accardo. Hey guys, welcome back to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, Tara Accardo, and we are doing something a little different today. And just to quickly explain what this minisode is, for a little context, since the day I've started this podcast, of course, I am always here to bring you guys detailed, as in-depth coping tools and modalities of healing and coping with grief that you can possibly get, right? And there's a lot to talk about here. There are a lot of different topics, and there's varying levels of depth that I might go into on one topic or another. But since I started the podcast, there have occasionally been things that have come up that I'm like, man, that would make like a really good episode. But if you've been around a little while, you know, my podcast episodes can sometimes be 40 minutes or more. And it got me thinking, you know, what if I could do something a little bit different where I give you guys maybe a slightly shorter episode, so think 15, 20 minutes, with a topic that might not warrant like a full-on, super in-depth conversation, but is something that is just like really impactful, is going to help you right here, right now, that you can just like tune into on a quick drive or when you first wake up or when you go to bed or wherever you're tuning in from, and just get a little inspiration and guidance and support on a particular topic that I like to consider pretty hot topics, actually. A lot of these things might be things I might talk about in a reel on Facebook or something, but that's what got me thinking. I was like, you know, I feel like there's more to be said here. It's worth a conversation, but maybe not in my traditional, lengthier podcast episode format. So here we are with this idea of a minisode. So I'm really excited about this. And listen, I'm constantly trying new things with the podcast. So this might work, this might not work. You guys might love this, you might hate it, who knows? But I figured, why not? Let's try it out. And if these work for you guys and you're liking them, I'll add more in because I think this is really fun. So that being said, if there is a topic or something you're kind of struggling with that I can help address here on the podcast, whether it warrants a bigger, larger conversation, maybe it involves me bringing a guest on, or maybe it's perfect for a little mini-sode like this, please DM me. My mailbox is open, hello@losesbecomegains.com. I'm always here for you. Also remember, you can drop me a voice note through SpeakPipe. That is linked in the show notes too. I am all ears, you guys. Whatever helps you helps me and helps other grievers too. So that being said, I'm really excited to get into this. So for this first mini-sode, so to speak, I wanted to talk about the top 3 wellness tips that you need right now if you are grieving. And I wanted to address this topic because I saw something online recently that really got me thinking, and I think this is just such an important thing to call out and talk about and break down, because so many grievers that I speak to, whether it is through DMs, whether it's people in my membership, whether it's people that I one-on-one coach, they are constantly either asking me, like, what can I do? How do I start healing? How do I take better care of myself? Like, where do I even start? Or they feel overwhelmed because they feel like they are just trying to do it all. They're trying to figure out what works for them. And I was like, you know what? We need to take a step back here. That is like my whole thing on this podcast, right? Like, let's just take it down a notch. Let's take a deep breath and let's get back to basics. And I feel like talking about this today is like such a beautiful way to do that. So let's just start by saying that the wellness industry and this like health and self-care and wellness space, it is a $1 trillion industry. And with all the money that comes from the endless products and apps and gadgets and gimmicks and everything promises to be the secret to better health, right? And you can think of this both in grief and outside of grief, of course. But we, as consumers especially, we are constantly bombarded with mixed messages, and we are stuck in a healthcare system, especially here in the US, that often overlooks the simplest and most crucial steps that you can take to improve your health. And guess what, you guys? There are things that will cost you nothing. Nothing. So if you are chasing the next big wellness solution and your health routine feels exhausting or overwhelming, something is not right about that, right? Wellness, self-care, health, it should not be overcomplicated. We don't need to overthink it. And I have seen firsthand how we can overcomplicate health. And again, I'm speaking mostly in the US here. I don't want to speak for other countries, but I'm sure this is not necessarily a unique problem to us, or it's certainly situational. So my point here is wellness and good health and good coping tools when we are grieving should not feel like a full-time job. If you are grieving, you've got enough going on. Am I right? So let's not add on to that. Don't put more pressure on yourself. Because despite what the latest, biohacking tool or trendy supplement says, the foundation of your health is built on just a few habits: sleep, hydration, breathing. Think about it. Seriously, just those 3 things: sleep, hydration, breathing. And the reason I bring this up, and as far as like supplements and things like that, I mean, listen, ultimately, if that speaks to you and those things help you, go for it. I want to clarify here too. Like, I am not saying not to do those things. Like, more power to you. Do what works for you. This was also on my mind lately because I was actually with my husband in a store, and he was looking at I think it was maybe a probiotic or something to help with sleep. And I'm all about probiotics, by the way, for sure. But there was some gummy he was looking at to help promote better sleep, because we have a 9-month-old. We're still not, she sleeps well, but we're still not sleeping as we once were. And I was like, babe, I feel like there's other things you might want to try before taking yet another pill, because he takes other vitamins and supplements and things. I was like, I hate to say it this way, but in my personal opinion, a pill is not, a gummy thing of all things is not going to be the thing that helps you sleep. There's ways that we have to tap into that and regulate our systems that will help us with that. It's getting to the core. It's getting to the root of the issue. It's not taking some pill and hoping or thinking that it's going to help. Now, again, depends on the pill, depends on, there's a lot of situational things going on here too, right? I'm not here to say that none of these things work. Maybe they do. But in the situation of my husband, at least, I was like, I feel like there's some things that we could do first to help you with your sleep before going and taking yet another vitamin that may or may not work. So again, sleep, hydration, breathing. And I think these are 3 things that people overlook. We often overlook the basics when we are trying to get some relief, especially when we're grieving. So in this minisode, let's quickly talk about what really matters for your health so you can get to the root of your wellness and really get on this journey in a meaningful way and stop wasting time and money on fleeting trends when you likely just need to get back to the roots of yourself and to just ground yourself and build a foundational wellness routine that is based on common sense and science-driven wellness advice. And if I am not an expert here, right? I am a grief coach. This is coming from the perspective of a grief coach. But again, let me just quickly say, if some fleeting trend or something special like that sparks joy for you or gives you a little happiness or something that you at least want to try during a time of great sadness, again, more power to you. You do it. You enjoy it. Whatever helps you at the end of the day. But I think it is so important when we're grieving now more than ever that we get back to us and tap into our soul and what we really need. And that is often from 3 things that we can really easily forget to do when we're grieving: sleep, hydrate, and breathe. Really good, deep, meaningful breaths. So back to my main points here. Let's run through these and let's talk about why they're important. So sleep, first and foremost. Sleep is crucial for those who are grieving because it plays a vital role in emotional regulation, cognitive function, and just our overall well-being, and all of which are disrupted during grief. So here's why sleep is particularly important for the grieving process, and this is why this is so important to get a handle on. Number one is just our emotional resilience. So grief often brings very intense emotions, of course, like sadness, anger, confusion, all of the things, right? Sleep helps regulate those emotions, which makes it easier to process and cope with them. And a lack of sleep can actually exacerbate these feelings of irritability, of overwhelm, anxiety, and it makes grief even harder to manage. A second point here is cognitive function. So grieving can really cloud our focus and our memory, and this can lead to what is often referred to as grief brain. And so sleep supports these cognitive processes like attention, decision-making, memory, all of which are essential when we're navigating the real complexities of loss. And I remember for sure in the earlier days of my grieving journey that making a decision felt like it was just pulling teeth. It was the last thing I wanted to do. I wanted really easy things laid out in front of me so I didn't have to think so much. But Lord knows I was not sleeping well in those first several days too. And mind you, I still am, living at the condo that was my parents', not immediately after my dad and mom died, but like however many months after I started sleeping in their room. I felt very unsettled. It felt sort of like alive with them still. It was so weird and hard, you guys. So this getting sleep thing, it was a process for me, but it was little action steps that I took every single day that ultimately got me there. So just want to throw that out there. And I also just want to, give context here. I can understand how difficult it is to get good sleep when we're grieving. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that that's easy. I want to call that out. I want to validate that. But it's a reason that it's important to take it seriously because it will kind of help make you feel better. So another point here is physical health. So grief, of course, can take a toll on the body. It weakens our immune system. It can increase our stress levels. So adequate sleep helps repair our body. It strengthens our immune system and it reduces the physical impact of stress, which can wreak absolute havoc on us physically and emotionally. It's also really important for processing our emotions. So sleep, especially that deep REM sleep, is associated with emotional processing and memory consolidation. So it allows the brain to process difficult emotions in a safe, subconscious space, which helps those of us who are grieving gradually come to terms with our loss. So I like to think of this as something that is happening sort of beneath the surface. We might not even realize this is a thing or that this is happening, but it is, and it is actually helping us along in the healing process, which again, it never really ends, right? But it does help with better coping. Another thing that good sleep does is it helps prevent complicated grief. So prolonged sleep deprivation can lead to mental health challenges, think depression, anxiety, or complicated grief, which is when the mourning process can become prolonged or really overwhelming. And so regular, very restorative sleep can help prevent grief from becoming more severe, ultimately. So if you already think it's bad, right? We want to do everything in our power to make sure that it's not worse for us. So that's where sleep comes in. And it also just gives us energy for daily functioning. What if we have a job that we still have to do? What if we have kids? What if we have a partner? All these things that we have to continue showing up for. Grief can drain both the emotional and our physical energy. So sleep restores our body's energy reserves, which allows us to engage with life again when it feels like we can't or we just don't want to. But it can help us maintain our social connections, which is really important. I definitely shut a lot of people out in my grieving journey, but social connections are important and finding the right ones are so important. but also it just helps with navigating just our daily responsibilities as we mourn. So again, sleep, it is critical. It's important. More to come on this. I actually have an episode that is coming soon about coping with insomnia as we're grieving or after you experience a loss. So I think sleep is a bigger conversation. But again, if we're just going based on my 3 top wellness tips and tools here, this is one of them, but more to come on that. Real quick interruption here, and then we'll get back to this episode. If you're someone who is experiencing some form of loss and are trying to navigate the complexities of grief, which you likely are in some capacity if you've stumbled upon this podcast, then this message is for you. If you haven't heard about my Life with Grief membership and community yet, this is truly something you need to check out. This membership is here to guide you into living a deeper, more meaningful, and full life after experiencing loss. Who doesn't want that, right? I created this membership because I know what it's like to navigate and cope with grief on a daily basis, and I know the tools and support it takes to do this effectively. I've done the work myself, and I've coached people just like you to do the same. It comes down to having impactful, effective resources and tools at your disposal, having the right support around you from people who can understand and empathize with your grief, and having encouragement and inspiration around you consistently to not only elicit and spark change, but to keep it and keep the positive momentum going. Check out the details linked in the description, and I hope to see you in there. Number 2, hydration. So hydration is especially important for those who are grieving a loss because, again, our physical well-being often takes a backseat during times of emotional distress. But staying hydrated plays a really important role in supporting both our body and our mind during an unimaginably difficult time. So here's why hydration matters. First of all, it can help us manage our emotional stress. So no secret, grief is especially draining. It's a very draining process, but dehydration can amplify feelings of fatigue, stress, and anxiety. And again, it's one of those things that's so sneaky, you guys. It can really creep up on us, and we don't even realize that we're like not drinking enough. And we might not always be thirsty, right? Like we got other things on our mind. So proper hydration helps stabilize our mood by supporting the balance of hormones. Think cortisol levels, which are all elevated during times of stress, especially extreme stress, like that of losing a loved one or going through a divorce or some difficult time. Hydration also helps with cognitive function and focus. So we talked about this a little bit before, but dehydration can impair our cognitive functions, which can lead to more confusion during a time that is already very confusing. Difficulty concentrating. Again, we're already having difficulty concentrating, so dehydration can add to that. And again, that kind of brain fog, those symptoms that are often exacerbated by grief. So again, that dehydration, it can worsen our fatigue. It makes it harder to muster the energy that is needed for daily tasks, for self-care. So proper hydration helps us maintain just that steady energy level that we need, which is so hard to tap into, I know, but that is crucial for navigating the very challenging emotional landscape of loss. And again, similar to sleep, it can help us prevent physical symptoms. So think here, headaches, dizziness, muscle tension, that can all take a massive toll on us as we're grieving. And because grieving can often lead to just that neglect of basic needs, i.e. hydration or eating well, all the more reason that staying hydrated can prevent those additional discomforts from compounding the emotional weight of everything else we're going to. And again, to tie into sleep, making sure that we're getting enough hydration and water, that affects our sleep quality, which is, like I just said, essential for that healing process that we are now finding ourselves on. So I should note, it's important not to overhydrate close to bedtime, but if you're on it, have that water bottle. I'm holding up my Stanley cup here. Not an ad, I just love Stanley cups. If you have a water bottle that you like, or maybe one that helps you track your ounces, that's all you got to do all day. It's not to add one more task and thing to do on your list, but just make sure that you're, just keeping track of those things and just being like, okay, I've had 3 of these today. I should probably have one more, whatever it is. that can promote better rest at night. And friendly reminder, I heard somewhere that it's important to drink about half your body weight in ounces of water per day. I'm fairly certain that's still true. So again, I'm not a health and wellness expert here, but something along those lines. Just keep to those guidelines and you'll be all set. And again, it's just something that just adds to our self-care habits. So eating enough, drinking enough, sleeping enough, staying hydrated. That's just the most simple and effective way that we can take care of our body. And our body needs to be taken care of. It's doing so much. It's going through so much. We are emotionally going through so much. Your brain is going through so much. It's, trying to get used to this new normal. It's updating prediction patterns because, you might have been used to your loved one coming home from work at a certain time every day or calling you or whatever. And all of a sudden, maybe at the drop of a hat, that is no longer your reality. And so just give your brain a break. Think about all of the things that it is doing to try and keep you going and get you on track. And we want to foster that environment for our body and our brain to be able to, thrive as much as it can during a time of very deep grief. So last but not least here, breathing. Deep breaths and breathing exercises are so important for grieving a loss because they can significantly help manage the very overwhelming emotions that is associated with grief, of course. So I want to mention that I feel so strongly about this in particular that I created a digital product for you guys because this has been so transformative and pivotal in my own grieving journey and for those that I coach. So if you were not already aware, I created my 14-day relief in your grief experience, which you can access through the show notes here. I created this because one of the biggest struggles I hear from my members and clients, and people on social media too, is that they just need some relief from the stress, the sadness, the pain, the anguish that loss can cause. But here's the thing. So many people are just lost and unsure about where to even start with this process. And this can feel like a really huge thing to tackle. So I really wanted to break it down, take the guesswork out of it for you, and start with just 14 days. That's it. So basically in 2 weeks, I guide you through really powerful stress and grief relief strategies, healing and coping modalities, think mindset shifts, meditations, breath work, manifesting techniques, and just methods to set you up for just a little more joy and clarity and peace in your day-to-day life with grief. Because my goal is to set you up for success with all of the stress and complexities and layers that navigating life with grief can bring you. And this is just a perfect place to start. Again, you can find out all about this in the link in the show notes or on my website, but that is there for you, my friend, if you need it. So real quick, just to kind of start wrapping this episode up, let's talk about why breath work is so important as we're grieving. Number one, it calms our nervous system. So grief often triggers the body's stress response, which leads to feelings of anxiety, tension, and overwhelm. And deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which I feel like I've talked about here on the podcast before a little bit. I've at least touched on it, but that promotes relaxation by lowering our heart rate and our blood pressure. And so this can counteract that sort of fight or flight response that is really common during periods of intense emotional distress. Breath work can also help regulate our emotions. So it is no secret, grief can cause big emotional swings from sadness to anger to numbness, anxiety, you name it, we got it, right? We're experiencing it. So deep, controlled breaths really help regulate our emotions by slowing down the body's emotional response to these emotions, which just allows us to feel a little more grounded and in control. Breathing exercises can also reduce our physical symptoms of grief. So just like the good sleep and the good hydration, grief can manifest in a lot of different ways. Like I said earlier, muscle tension, headaches, tightness in our chest, shallow breathing. I caught myself breathing so shallow so many times. I still do it, especially if I'm at a desk for a long time during the day. Again, you guys, this is important for both in and out of grief. So Deep breaths help release this tension and increase our oxygen flow throughout our body, which alleviates some of those physical discomforts that can plague us. So, very important point there, but also it can help us improve our focus and mental clarity. So, as we're grieving, obviously it's common to feel distracted or kind of scatterbrained. It's that grief brain that we talked about earlier. But breathing exercises can help clear that mental fog by providing just a moment, a mere moment for now, of mindfulness and focus, which ultimately improves our cognitive function and helps you stay present. And I feel like this is so important to mention, like let's say your kid's being a little unruly, or you're at work because you only got so many days off for bereavement and you are still grieving, perhaps deeply grieving, and you are just trying to keep your head above water. That is it's so important, this breath work. And it's why I'm a big fan of box breath and, just taking those moments to really just be with ourselves and be present and bring down those heightened emotions for even a few moments. And breathing also creates space for emotional processing. So taking those deep breaths gives us a moment to pause and create space for our emotions. Because grief can feel like just this emotional sandstorm of chaos. But by focusing on our breath, we can slow down and give ourselves time to process the feelings rather than becoming overwhelmed by them. And we ultimately become less judgmental of them, and we can recognize them as they come in. And I've talked about this a lot on social media as well before, why it's so important to be able to recognize our emotions and identify them and feel them, because that is ultimately the key. That is what is going to help us really cope with and navigate our grief in the best way. All right, so just the last couple things here. It also helps relieve anxiety and panic. So intense grief can sometimes trigger panic attacks or feelings of breathlessness. And breathing exercises like diaphragmatic breathing, think belly breathing, or box breathing that I just mentioned, that can help reduce the likelihood of a panic attack because it teaches the body to regulate its breathing patterns and ultimately remain calm. It can also promote self-awareness. So practicing that conscious breathing can really enhance our self-awareness. It brings us a little more in tune with what's going on around us. It gets us in tune with our emotions, our body sensations, and again, just witnessing our thoughts without judgment. And this mindfulness, that's a really important step in coping with our grief. And I don't want to say like accepting our grief, but just understanding it and being sort of resigned to like, okay, this is my life now. Let me take a step back. Let me acknowledge that this is perhaps not what I wanted or needed right now. This is not what I ever envisioned happening, but okay, this is my reality. This is what's going on. And the more that we can bring presence to that, you guys, I know it's painful. I know these are not things we want to sit there and think about and acknowledge, but that is the key to healing. That is the key to this path forward. And it also encourages presence, again, in that moment. And grieving can make us feel very disconnected or lost with people around us that we're present with, but it can also make us feel lost in past memories or fears of the future, or, getting caught up in thinking of like what we no longer have. So breathing exercises really help bring us back to the present moment and allows us to feel more connected to our surroundings, to the people around us, and ultimately to ourselves. So, by focusing on our breath, those of us who are grieving, we can create a moment of calm amidst a lot of emotional chaos, and it just gives our mind and body a chance to rest and recover. And so that's really what I wanted this episode to be about, you guys. These are basics. These are things that I think people, especially us grievers, can often forget or neglect, but the power is within you. These answers are within you, and it is within that good restful sleep. It's within making sure that we are hydrating and nourishing ourselves. And it is making sure that we are getting that oxygen that we so desperately need, and just being present to all of it. And I know it's a painful process. I know you probably didn't ask for this, and this is never what you would have chosen for yourself, no matter what your circumstances are. But I hope these tips were helpful today. I hope this maybe inspired you a little bit or just helped shed some light on why these things are so important, and just to remind you that it's okay to take it back to basics. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to try all the gimmicks and all the crazy things out there. Like, just bring it back to the root of us being here and being alive and the basics of what we need to live. And 3 of those things are sleeping and eating and drinking and breath, right? So, okay, this was a little longer than I thought. I anticipate these being a lot shorter, but this is the first one. This is kind of a special one, and I really wanted to make sure I covered all of our bases here, and just to help you guys understand the why behind why these 3 tools and tips are so important. So I hope this was helpful today. If you liked this, a slightly shorter version, and just these, again, sort of hot topics and hot takes on things, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, I am sending you the biggest hug and so much light and love today. You are not alone in this journey at all. I'm here for you. Inbox is open, DMs are open. And that being said, I will see you in the next episode. I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. I'm so grateful you're here and for the steps you're taking to heal your heart, open your mind, fulfill your soul, learn, grow, and evolve, and move through this crazy thing called life in big, beautiful, impactful ways. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog, more coping tools, ways to work with me, and so much more. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Losses Become Gains Podcast. I love seeing new faces, meeting new people, hearing your stories, and supporting you however I can. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and share this episode or this podcast with someone who could use it too. And remember to always keep asking yourself, how will I turn my losses into gains today? I'll catch you in the next episode.